Happy New Year. The Wolff Den is back after a short break. We're here with another great guest. Welcome to the Wolff Den, Ed Katz, Katnip Marketing. How's everything going?
Hey, Matt, how are you? Great to be here. Thank you for having me. Appreciate
Yeah, doing great. Looking forward to talking, obviously, about marketing and a whole bunch of other stuff. What was the highlight of your end of year, let's say, the last month or so, holidays? Anything that stood out for you towards the end of the year?
Well, it was great having our daughter visit us from St. Petersburg, Florida, for a little over a week. But work-wise, yeah, I got from a public relations standpoint, I got one client in feature article in People Magazine, New York Post, and then on Entertainment Weekly and Entertainment Tonight. So that was all good.
That's all good PR, of course. Well, tell everyone real quick who you are and what you do, and then we'll get going on everything.
Sure. So I started inside the media. I went to Syracuse, had a dual major, marketing in the management school, and then film in the Newhouse School of Communications, and started working inside the media, radio, cable, broadcast television, and then opened an ad agency with a partner after several years and grew that. I spent more time managing the staff, and I wanted to be working with the clients and doing marketing, so I sold my half of that, opened Katnip Marketing now 15 years ago. And what we do is we work with clients and help them grow their presence on the social media platforms, and that makes it easier for me to do the public relations part of it, where we get interviews and get media articles written about the clients. Because if they have a following of 35 or 150, media reporters really don't care too much. But if they've got 5,000 or 10,000 followers, all of a sudden the media is more open to paying attention and possibly writing or doing a story about them.
Yeah, I definitely want to touch on that. Syracuse, long known as a great broadcasting college, right? And
Sure.
media journalism. Why is that?
Everybody went there. I don't know why. It's like if you want to get on the radio station, freshmen don't have a chance. They have to wait until at least sophomore year, and they do all the behind the scenes stuff first, and they see the other ones go. So yeah, I mean, Mike Tirico, Bob Costas, Marv Albert. There's so many of them who went there. They're all legends. And several of the guys who, Ian Eagle, Bob Wuchus, and the guys who are on the radio now, and TV. Do a lot of the sports, particularly for whatever reason, it was like a magnet. And Dick Clark, of course, who there's a whole wing, Newhouse 3. He had the building. He funded it, and he's got his name on the building.
Yeah, a lot of great names there, for sure. Let's start with defining marketing and PR and what that really means to you, because it's so vague and general. When I was studying in college, and what did I want to be when I grow up? I wanted to be in marketing and promotions. I ended up many years later in sales, and now I started this company. But I wanted to be in marketing and promotions. They're all kind of tied together: marketing, advertising, sales, promotions, PR. What does marketing mean to you? How does it tie in with PR? And I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, PR is a component of marketing. Marketing is the overall umbrella of which there are several kind of spokes that come underneath, from advertising to product placement, branding, and even the distribution of getting it. If it's a specific hard good product, getting it into the stores. There's product placement, there's display, merchandising. There's so many small and yet important aspects to it. But to me, the keys are the branding, how it's positioned, and then the message that's communicated about it. So how it gets out there, and and I've done crisis communications too. So it's trying to control the message of the brand. Like for example, Bud Light kind of lost their focus on that when they did tried to do something and expand the appeal of the brand to a transgender celebrity, and a lot of the Bud Light fans hated it, and they just tanked the beer, and they're boycotting it, and sales have been on a serious decline for Bud Light because they tried one little experiment to broaden their horizons of who their target audience could be, and it really backfired on them. So it's important to know. So research is a part of it too, obviously, knowing who your customers are, and getting an understanding of that, and then being able to mobilize them and motivate them to be loyal customers and buy your products and services.
Well, this is a different world than it was before. I mean, even in the Bud Light, it's just I laugh at the boycott of Bud Light, because these people who were boycotting Bud Light were drinking other products and beers that the Anheuser-Busch was
Or competitors who support the same kind of causes. Absolutely.
So, you know, even the bars are, well, we won't sell Bud Light, but we'll sell everything else that they sell, and you're just like, okay.
That's the perception thing. You know, they say perception's reality, that kind of thing. So yeah. There you go.
But it is important I think it's important to stand for things. I'm very vocal in what I believe in, and to stand for things. I think we're all hypocrites. I'll get that out of the way. I think we're all hypocrites. There's no way around it. If we go deep enough and try and go down all the rabbit holes, you're going to find someone who, something that I believe in or I support, Chick-fil-A, whatever,
sure.
whatever that is. So I'm always careful how much I would say boycott or publicly bash a brand or a company for what they do.
Right. And I understand that. But I would even say, even in religion, if you look at the Bible, there's contradictory passages. So, someone can cite this one thing to justify an action or something, and someone else can cite something that says exactly the opposite. They're both in there. What do you choose to believe? So
I'm gonna go on a limb and say that you're probably like me, not that you're Jewish like me. So we don't. So the religion is a whole nother crazy. It's just it's wild.
People are just kind of going to your point of contradictory things being hypocritical. I mean, I'm not denouncing religion at all. I'm just saying there's contradictory passages.
Believe me, it's okay if you do. There's some great comedy out there that Mark Maron does some great stuff. I mean,
oh gosh, yes,
it's so good. This stuff and it's all religions too. So we're not just picking on anything. But it's interesting because I think when you take a stand, and I like to take stands. I used to do it before, and not really worry so much now. I don't care, because it's me, it's my company, it's my brand, it's what we stand for. And if I alienate half of a customer base on something that I truly believe in, I'm okay with that. Like, if there was someone who I didn't, there's the people I wouldn't do business with because there's plenty of reasons. And I'm okay with that. And that might alienate. There's plenty of people. But you got to be, I think it's important to stand for what you believe in. And I think a lot of people don't do it enough because they're beholden to the people that they work for or under, or they're so worried about the PR for it. You can't please everybody. So I think you should really, be honest with who you are and what you want to believe in.
That's right. Absolutely.
The PR part of it, you talked about some of the wins you had. One of the things that I see in PR, and I'm not in the weeds like you are, seems to be a lot of pay for play. And I, for people who aren't as educated or, I guess, willing to do the work to get it without that, and there's shortcuts, and people do that, and there's shortcuts to getting followers for all that. So how do you because I think that the average consumer is not that educated, and they don't know the difference between whether or not you paid for this publicity or whether you earned the publicity. So why not take the shortcut, or what's the advantage to earning it? What would you say to that?
Well, I'm reminded, a funny show, which is very politically incorrect, is 2.5 Men, if you've seen it. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the episodes had the John Cryer character, who was a chiropractor, who was featured on the cover of some local magazine. And when his brother, played by Charlie Sheen, started grilling him about it, he found out he paid to get that placement of him on the cover. So, there was a whole discussion about the value of that, and was he cheating or taking a shortcut? And It was a pretty funny episode, but it kind of gets to your point of, well, is that real? And I think there's a place for it. I think it needs to be. It's a case by case basis whether I think it makes sense for a client. There are certain cases where I think it does, and there's a lot where I think it doesn't. I've almost never used it for a client, but there were one or two instances where it made sense for various reasons for the client, for sales purposes. But as a general rule, it's not, ordinarily, it's not something I recommend, but there are specific cases where it does make sense.
And, you mentioned earlier about the difference between someone who might have a couple hundred followers and a couple thousand followers. That's stuff that can be bought also. I think, and it's easy for me to say because I'm on the smaller end of the following, but I think that's a poor way for people to try and figure out what the story is. Everyone's looking for that person who's got that the following already. But I think, highlighting the smaller people would be probably just as compelling a story or content as the bigger names. But they don't, that's just not the way they do it. So, how do you go about telling a potential customer who's a smaller one as opposed to, it's easier when they're big and they're known, right? How do you guide the smaller people and tell them what should they be doing?
The reason what we're seeing now, and it really accelerated when COVID hit, the media outlets, local news particularly, took a big hit. They cut their staffs, they cut their budget, so they cut their staffs. And what was happening was they started doing things they never did before. They started doing Zoom interviews on local news, which they would never do before unless they absolutely had to. Someone was overseas, then they would do it. But that's kind of an exception. But for local news, you have to now they're going to look and see because they want to get their story seen. So if they're going to do a story on you versus someone else, and you've got 150 followers and someone else has 15,000 followers, they're probably going to pick the one that has the 15,000 followers because as a reporter, a journalist, they know though that will go out to that person's followers, so more people will see the story that they produced.
So I mean, if someone, it's almost like the messenger and not the message. If I wanted to do an experiment, it didn't work, but if I was going to mimic someone who had like 1 million followers online, I just put the same exact thing as they did. And it was generic, right? Hey, good morning. What was your favorite thing that happened this week? And I was just mimicking them. It would be incredible that I wouldn't even get, it wouldn't increase the number of impressions or comments or anything that I got. So it just becomes not about what someone's saying, but really who they are. And who they are, isn't always exactly who they are, right? Because whatever you're seeing on social media, sure, it just becomes so hard to cut through all the BS, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there are celebrities, we all know them, I don't even want to name them, but there are celebrities who are famous for being famous and don't really do much, but they make a lot of money because they're famous. But for whatever reason, people follow them, and therefore they have eyeballs, and the eyeballs have value if they want to commoditize it and sell it, to sponsors. But so that, there are influencers that are legitimate influencers in certain fields. And if someone has got 150,000 followers, because they're a passionate skateboarder and they're a pro at it, okay, great. So, someone wants to buy into that skateboarding audience, they do a sponsorship deal with that particular skateboarder, and they get to access that following a little bit.
Yeah,
like Tiger Woods has been identified with Nike for 27 years. That's just ending now. So full page ad in the New York Times today, thank you, Tiger. So Nike's cashing in, on the last vestige of their sponsorship relationship with Tiger Woods with a full page ad in the New York Times today. So,
what do you think is going to happen with Tiger? I mean, Tiger's Tiger. He's not going to.
It's going to go with a different sponsor. That's all.
Yeah, but I mean, I have stuff. I think I have Tiger Woods shorts. I think they're great. They're Nike. I don't know. I don't know. I guess that's not a great example. It doesn't matter what Tiger does. He's going to be fine.
Right.
He's got more money, and people will buy whatever it is. It just feels like people buying because someone pushed this. Like, I wouldn't pay someone to push my product. If you like my product, then let's talk about it. I had someone on this show who said something about protein shakes that they take, and I said, "Oh, do you want to say who it is?" Said, well, if they're not paying me, I'm not going to say it. It's I mean, I get it, but then it's just like, look, I'm always look, this is a sticker mule. They don't need to pay me to say it's sticker mule. It's great. I love it. It's like a fat head for my wall. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Right against the wall. It's just great. I think people should share more about, because they like it, not because someone, is on television pushing it or one of these athletes are pushing it. I don't know. I probably do buy, and my purchases are a little bit influenced on who it might be, a sneaker. Like, I have some sneakers that is a LeBron, and I have a KD, and I think I have Curry. Maybe if it wasn't theirs and it was the same thing, would I have bought it? I don't know. It obviously works because people are doing it and they're paying a lot of money.
I know the kids, it matters a lot to the kids. And Air Jordans were a thing. I mean, did you see the movie Air?
Oh, great movie.
Terrific movie, right? And the funniest thing to me was about, the Just Do It slogan, where that came from. Do you remember that?
No.
It was the last words of a guy who was going to have the firing squad kill him. Just do it. Those were his last words. Nike took those words. That's where they got the branding from. It's like, whoa, that's really where it came from. Okay.
I mean, it's the greatest tagline in the history of the world, in my opinion.
Right. But that's where it came from. So it's kind of shocking. But yeah, terrific movie. But it goes into the whole thing on how, college student Michael Jordan became the brand identifier for Nike and just helped explode their sales phenomenally well.
He makes like $400 million in
a year,
and that's on set. That's like that's just ancillary.
That's just from his residual royalties on sneakers.
It's nuts. It's crazy. Is he the best marketed athlete in the history of the world?
I think so. I think that deal that if you watch the movie, his mother cut for him, where she did the royalty thing. I think that may have been the biggest one. Yeah. And I just saw last year. You're in Florida too, right?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. So our relatively local Florida athlete Coco Gauff was the number one earning female sports celebrity in the past year, which I think is really cool. I would not have guessed that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was in articles.
It's interesting because I won't name the person, but I was inviting them to the Wolff Den, and they're a pretty big celebrity and well-known athlete, and they wanted a ridiculous amount of money for me to come on. I don't pay anyone to come on the show. I think, but my feeling is that no matter how famous you are, and no matter how important and well-known you are, there's a ton of people out there who have no idea who you are and what you do. And especially if you're doing something that's not what you were known for, like, Matt Damon is involved in water, right? I mean, we know Matt Damon is an actor, right? But he's really big in the clean water. I don't know exactly what it is. But even if you knew Matt Damon, you might not know that he was in this venture. But there's plenty of people, including Brent, if he's still listening, who just doesn't know a lot of celebrities. He knows most athletes. So I think it's important to get in front of new audiences and to be, really might be more important to be in front of people who don't know who you are than the people who do know who you are. And that's sort of the type of thing we aim to do here on the Wolff Den, is to have the conversation that you wouldn't have if you were sitting on Jimmy Kimmel or a late night television show, which is going to be generic questions that I've probably heard you answer 100 times.
Right. And, they just go on those shows to promote whatever their latest thing is.
Yeah. What do you think about the NIL in college. I mean, that's marketing, that's branding. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's real tricky. The name, image, likeness thing. There's it's become a battle of the bigger schools versus the smaller schools, and the concern is the smaller schools it's going to be harder for them to compete now because they don't have the funds to essentially pay these student athletes like the bigger schools do. And I mean, at my alma mater, Syracuse, we just changed our football coach. We got one of the not the head coach, but one of the coaches. I think he was the defensive coach for Georgia. And he's bringing in a whole new attitude and going big on trying to get alumni to donate to a fund for the name, image, likeness, so Syracuse can be more competitive in what they offer. And one of the first transfers they got was the Ohio State quarterback, who led them to a terrific season overall. And now Syracuse has this new quarterback coming in from Ohio State. I'm sure the NIL money had a lot to do with that. But that's what they're doing because that's how they have to be competitive.
I mean, I mentioned that because from a marketing and PR perspective, the NIL, it's a whole nother conversation. It's the Wild West. There are no rules. We don't even know what it is. But essentially, people are paying money to get recognition for their brand connecting to these athletes. It's not that different from naming rights. And anytime you see a lot of money associated with a brand or a product or an athlete or a building, because my feeling is that they know that they're going to get the ROI. They've done the numbers. They know that, paying a couple $1 million for this person to make these appearances is going to result in us getting, whatever measurement they want to see.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really a marketing PR, right? It's just a matter of what is it worth to connect with these people and what are we going to see back? I mean, some of them you think these make no sense. Like, why is this bank the sponsor for this arena? I already know this bank. Everyone knows Wells Fargo Bank. Why is but there's something about it that from a marketing and PR perspective makes sense to them.
I will share a story with you from a client I had years ago, and I worked with them for at least 6 years. A terrific client, Nationwide Insurance. And, in golf for many years, I don't know if they still have it, but I'm not a golf fan, but there was the Nationwide Tour. And when they had me out in Columbus, Ohio to talk, because I worked with all their New England agents. So they had several different regions. So they bring all the regional agencies into Columbus, where their headquarters were, and at the arena where the Blue Jackets play their hockey. That's where we would have these meetings.
Yeah.
And I said to them, it's called the Nationwide Tour, but I don't know how many people know that it means, nationwide insurance. And why aren't you calling it the Nationwide Insurance Tour? And they said, well, we're promoting financial service products, things like that too. And I said, okay, but people hear the Nationwide Tour, they just think it's a national tour. And then finally, basically it turns out some of the top executives, they really love the golf thing and getting to play in the Pro-Am on the tour. And that was a big reason they were spending millions of dollars on the sponsorship,
right?
Not necessarily from a marketing branding standpoint.
Some of it is an advantage.
Okay,
some of it is we have so much money, we just want to be a part of this thing. I get it. I hope to have that kind of money. We're taking time machine where it doesn't make any sense to do this, but we're going to do it because it's fun and
exactly.
We're going to help and support people. But it is, it's just like with anything, even the Ohtani getting $700 million, like they're going to get more than that back. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. It's just
they did a great deal. He's only getting $2 million a year for the first several years. It's like kind of crazy. I think the first 10 years he's only getting $2 million, and all the rest is it's like someone joked and they said, "Oh, was Bobby Bonilla's agent with the Mets deal?" Bobby Bonilla's been retired for I don't know at least 10 years. He's still getting paid by the Mets every year.
I don't even think he's the one who's it's just there's a Bobby Bonilla day. Mike Hampton was getting paid a ridiculous amount of money from like 3 teams.
Yeah, and there were stories of coaches who get fired and they're getting their buyout while they're hired as so they're getting double paid from their severance package and then also their new team. It's crazy.
It's the money that's thrown around in sports, and even
everyone wonders why prices are so high now.
You look at these brands that are spending marketing money on sports and entertainment. It's billions of dollars.
Right.
and they're spending all this money on a Super Bowl ad, and you look at it and you're like, man, I can't believe they spent that on this ad. It was terrible.
Right.
But they're doing it, and there's a reason for it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, they feel there's the value is the return on investment, and it justifies the cost.
How has everything changed with the internet, with the phones, with Twitter and Instagram from a marketing PR perspective when you were first started your company 15 years ago to when to today?
Yeah, it's it keeps changing practically on a daily. I mean, it is on a daily basis, but I mean, the changes are less gradual than they used to be. So now it's good news, bad news, because there's so many more platforms you can market on. The bad news is it's so harder to reach people because they're so diluted and spread across so many different platforms. So it's a challenge to try to reach people. But at the moment, social media still has some really good targeting tools. Facebook's pretty exceptional in what they allow you to do at the moment. That could all change with regulations. But if someone has, they have a like for certain things, and there's history, you can target them. You can also do geofencing. I mean, we had a great plan. I had a client, and they had a show that was going to be at the Kravis Center here in West Palm Beach. And for those of you not familiar with it, if you're familiar with Lincoln Center in New York City, the Kravis Center is kind of like that for West Palm Beach. It's not quite as large, but it's
a great place to catch this show.
Right, exactly. So Hamilton was going to be at the Kravis Center, and actually it's going to be again, but the first time they had it, my client had a show that was going to be running a couple weeks after Hamilton. We were able to do a geofence campaign to target people who were attending Hamilton. We don't know who they are, it was anonymous, but their phones were in the theater during the times Hamilton was on stage. And we could do an ad targeted to those people. Perfect for another client that was going to have a show coming in a couple weeks after Hamilton to advertise there. So the ability to target through advertising now is so much more narrow and fine and targeted than it was. I mean, you just do a TV ad and it's whoever's watching the show. Much broader audience. And it still has its place, but it's very, very broad. If you want to do fine tuning, this is really fine tuning.
It's something incredible, the technology. I mean, even the stuff we're talking about right now is going to show up on my Facebook feed without, who knows, I have no idea. I get when you type it in, it goes, but now you just talk about it and it shows up. But you're talking about data. I come from a data background. I work for LexisNexis Risk Solutions. And the big thing that we talk about is bad data in, bad data out. And these companies, generally speaking, don't invest in cleaning up their data. Case in point, I go on a trip with my friends every year. We go to a different city, go to sporting events. 23 years. I keep getting emails from places I bought ticket one time randomly because I was in there from 15 years ago. Now, you might say to yourself, well, what's the harm? You just send it out. It doesn't matter. It's part of that. But there's other things and factors in there with this, whether it's the salespeople, it still counts as a number of, that you're putting out there. So how important is it to you to really, narrow down who you want to look for and target and make sure that you're targeting the right people and not just, there's value to throwing it out against the wall and seeing what happens, but then really targeting. Those are two different types of marketing strategies, right?
Right, and both can be effective, frankly. If you've got a limited budget, you want to target the best prospects possible. You got to go for the low-hanging fruit, easiest to reach, who are the right people. But there's another way where if you're not sure who your target is, you do a broad-based ad campaign, and you start, but you don't spend a lot. You just test it, and then you start to see, where you're getting some traction and what the common areas are, and then you can build a profile of your target customer. And then you focus on a bigger budget on reaching the target customers based on who was showing the initial inclination to like your product or buy it. So that it can work both ways, however you want to do it. So if you know who your target audience is, then all the better. And then you just keep monitoring it and checking it. And you probably heard of A/B testing. You do two ads very similar. You change one thing slightly, and you notice which one performs better, and then boom, that's the champion ad. You move that one over and get a new one up to compare against it and see which one does better, and keep refining it through the A/B process. So
Yeah.
there's different ways to do it, but the key is measuring it, tracking it, and getting what my company, what we've been saying is real results. Because it doesn't matter what we think is important; it matters what the client thinks is important. Is it just sales? Is it just a brand image, awareness, combination, and what's the priority? So that's what we focus on, is trying to deliver real results for the clients, whatever it means to them.
A lot of them don't know. That's the other issue, where you can come in and help them to say, what should it mean, as part of expertise that you might be able to contribute to.
Right. And we're working with one client now who's the CEO of a couple of companies on what her specific brand image is going to be. How does she want to be perceived, and to try to set herself up for where she's going to be 5 years from now? Does she want to be, a college professor? Does she want to write books, do TED Talks, whatever, speaking engagements? So we're going through that now and having the discussions. And the other part of it, we'll have the PR focused on her businesses.
Yeah. When we talk about data, I talk a lot about immeasurable data, which people don't like to talk about because you can't measure it. You can't put a dollar sign against it. Growing up, I was always told it's who you know, right? That's what's important. I also think I don't know if it's more important, just as important, who knows you. And we might not even know who knows you. As case in point, I talked about Sticker Mule here. Now all these people who are watching eventually are going to know about Sticker Mule, and they're going to go buy Sticker Mule, and Sticker Mule is going to say, maybe they'll ask a subject or a survey, how'd you find out about this? Who knows if someone's even going to say what they did, blah, blah, blah. Okay, they got a sale. It's just important to be out there, putting yourself out there and letting people know you, even if you don't necessarily know that they know who you are, because you can't measure it. And that goes to the branding, the marketing, and the PR. It can't always be about the numbers, right?
Right, absolutely. I mean, when you're building a brand, it's a lot harder to measure. You can do, and I just was in a focus group last week, so you can do those to try to get deep down into what people's perceptions are about things, but it's still just a snapshot, and it's just a handful of people that you're checking with in a focus group. So it's very hard to extrapolate the numbers to what a meaningful brand perception is of a large corporation or something when you do a couple focus groups. But it also may show if there's something going in the wrong direction and it doesn't align with what the corporate guidance really wants it to be. Then you got to, then you at least you're identifying it hopefully on the early side, and you can make corrections. Like the thing I was really amazed at was the hearings with the 3 Ivy League, 2 Ivy League and then MIT university presidents, and what a disaster that was, where it was so clear, and I've done crisis communications for several high-profile clients, names you would know, and I'm watching this with my jaw dropped, going, I can't believe they're just going with what the lawyer, using legal jargon, is giving them to say, and they're not answering the question to what people want to hear them say about anti-Semitism on their campuses. It was ridiculous. Yeah. And 2 of them lost their jobs already. And it's like, so sure enough, I found out, it was the law firm that did the coaching for them, and they did not bring in a crisis communications expert. Well, if you're being called to testify before Congress about why there's so many anti-Semitism incidents on your campus, if you don't define that as a crisis where you should have a crisis communications expert in, you're out in the weeds. You're completely lost. So
yeah, I think it's like a lot of big corporations, which these colleges and universities are institutions. They're worried about the backlash and legal ramifications.
And I get that. I don't think there's one instance where I've done crisis communications without the corporate counsel or a law firm present, and we would have discussions with them ongoing. But to have them just use legal jargon to answer that very specific question over and over, and they had chances to correct it, and common sense still didn't prevail, and they didn't correct it.
Common sense is, man, common sense anymore. It doesn't matter what's right and wrong. It doesn't matter what's fair. That's just the world. That's a different world now than it was before, when you could just go and sort of tell the truth. And who knows? The truth isn't even the truth anymore. It's your truth and it's my truth, when there used to be, there are things that are right and wrong, that are true and false. But it's the perception that we talked about from earlier.
That's right.
It doesn't matter. And so, how are you good at winning, the court of public opinion? Not, this whole thing of freedom of speech. People don't understand. Of course, you say whatever the heck you want to say, but that's not freedom from consequence.
That's right. That's right. Like the law students that, when Israel was attacked, they had this, I think it was it Harvard's law students? Yeah, signed a letter, a group in Harvard signed a letter supporting Hamas's attack initially, and then they walked it back. And meanwhile, these law firms were like making statements: "We're not hiring any of the people who signed this letter."
Yeah.
So it's free speech, but there are your consequences.
But they'll be fine. I mean, what was her name? Claudine Gay. She's still getting paid.
She is.
I think, I wouldn't want to be associated with her, because to me, that's just not that hard to denounce stuff. It seems like it shouldn't be, but yet for many people, they got to be like, well, what's the context of this? It doesn't matter what the context is. There's no right way in any of this, but somehow there is, right? Because there's half the people who are for it and be like, well, now why are we doing this to this person? And she plagiarized, and because she's, a black woman. No, that's not what it is.
Well, that was Al Sharpton's contention. He was going on that she was made to resign because she was black. Well, that didn't happen with the University of Pennsylvania president, who was white, and she was made to resign even quicker. And she didn't have any plagiarism accusations against her. So,
it just muddies the water. That's from a marketing and PR perspective. You hear this a lot in the political world, but it's just hard to get the truth out there when so many people can just say whatever it is that they want, and depending on how much influence they might have, even in the marketing and PR world, that's a tough thing to battle if you're a smaller fish in this, in the big sea with these big gigantic companies who can pay a lot of money, and it doesn't matter to them if they take a hit.
Let me give you a great example of that. I don't know if you ever watch, I think it's called Full Measure with Cheryl Atkinson, Sunday mornings on CBS. I'm shocked that she is able to do her show on CBS, because anyone, I think, who watches the media, and I'm sure you do, you'd say almost all the networks are kind of biased to the left, with, Fox News biased to the right. Okay, fine. I think we can pretty much all agree on that. And I had a conversation with a former high executive at one of the broadcast networks news divisions, very high senior VP. And I asked him, who's the most straightforward news, least biased? And he said, they're all biased. He said, pretty much all of them to the left and Fox News to the right. Okay, whatever. So let's just, for the moment, accept that. Well, I'm forgetting the point here, the key point.
You're talking about the Sunday morning show.
Cheryl Atkinson, right. So she did a story on, it was a freedom of speech story, but it was about the vaccine for COVID, and how, the government was covering up, or silencing is probably the better way to put it, people who were pointing up the ill effects of the vaccine. And they were calling it misinformation. And it wasn't. It was actually factually correct. But the government, our government, was asking Twitter to remove these posts. I mean, that's why I'm shocked that CBS ran this story, but she does some great work. I got to give her a lot of props.
Yeah, it's just hard to.
I was shocked watching that story.
And some of this stuff, this is what really amazes me in the world of media, and it's a PR kind of thing. The amount of people who will lie about something that is so easily debunked, or that will eventually come out as, hey, you lied. It feels like it's just always better to come and tell the truth, but now it might not be, because the way you're rewarded and second chances, and people will maybe believe you even in the face of conspiracy
Mhm.
theories. I mean, that would be my advice, would be just tell the truth and be honest about
Mhm.
what happened and why it happened. And
Right, and then you can move past it,
yeah,
right? Try to put it behind you by owning it.
yeah, because then you're not labeled as a bad person or someone who did bad things and a liar. You might be someone who just made a bad choice, did bad things. You might even be a bad person, but now you're not a liar, and that credibility, I think, is huge.
Right, and I worked with one client for a crisis communications project, and it's the only one I've worked with, at least, well, maybe close to 2 dozen clients with crisis communication situations. Only one had a bad outcome, and frankly, it was because they waited way too long to hire us. I kept telling them, "This is going south. You got to bring us on now." And the client didn't want to spend the money to do it, and more stuff kept coming out from his employees that they were doing bad stuff, and the news was getting it, and they started digging deeper and getting more out of it. And finally, when they brought us on, I said, "You realize at this point all we can try to do is damage control?" And he goes, "I realize that." I said, "Okay." And
Yeah,
that's
but damage control is important.
but it was sort of like, way too late. The floodgates had been opened, and all we're trying to do is, use a couple mops and clean up what we could. But
And some of that depends on who you are, how big of following you are, how popular you are, what your following is like. It just becomes, as someone like me who's a small person who's trying to make their way, needing help to get where they're at. I don't know. I feel like the media and the marketing and the PR of all of this we should try and elevate the good people and the people who are doing it right, and not reward the people who are, trying to play the system or whatever it is.
right, and it's funny because I've had that discussion with journalists to try to get them to cover a story with a client. I'm like, here, you guys are always looking for good news. Here's a real good news story. Local story. I've got a client I worked with for a long time where I'll tell you, it's the Pet Cottage in Jupiter, Florida, and Wendy's phenomenal. What she does is she takes in pets from people where the owners have been either disabled, deceased, or deployed in the military. Great story. There's no negative to it. It's positive, and you got really cute, mostly dogs. So finally we got a station to cover, but the stations were hesitant because, like, well, we work with this other organization, and it's like a competing thing. I'm like, well, no, nobody's really doing what they do.
Competing.
Right. It's not
trying to share the information, and there's 366 days this year to share that news. We'll find a way in different outlets, and share on multiple things. And by the way, if news media has 5 posts in a day, that it should just be one of those posts. It's
exactly. And they finally did it, but it took literally discussions over 2.5 months to finally get one nice 5-minute story on TV for them.
Yeah, you use the word client. I call them. I have customers. I know sometimes that's a difference between, if you're illegal, if it's maybe illegal, or you're giving service and advice. What does that mean to you? The difference between why you have clients and not customers?
I guess I always perceive clients as someone who hires a professional service firm, and customer is someone who goes to like a retail store to buy something.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I get it. It makes sense. I agree with that. It's always interesting the way people use the word client versus customer. I had someone in emails today, the difference between partnership and sponsorship. There's a big difference if you go to the weeds of it, but they're using these words wrong. It's important what you say and how you say it. Right. I think is very important in your message, almost as important as what the message is, because that's the way people are going to perceive it. But
right. If I can give a plug, is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, that's what we're here for.
So one of my clients is he's a celebrity. He's an actor who was nominated for an Oscar in Dog Day Afternoon. Chris Sarandon. He was also he did the voice of Jack Skellington in Nightmare Before Christmas. He starred in The Princess Bride. He was also in the Fright Night movies and the Chucky movies, Child's Play. So he's done a lot of movies. He's done Broadway, done a lot of voice work. and he's a great guy too, by the way. But he's got a podcast, and it's on cooking, but it's about the memories of stuff you grew up with in your household and what your favorite foods were and recipes and things like that. So it's Cooking by Heart. It's a podcast. I highly recommend it. And we've had some great celebrity guests for just the cooking world. Jacques Pepin, world-renowned chef. Lydia Bastianich, chef who's had a show on PBS for 15 years. And then some celebrities too. A lot of actors. He had LeVar Burton on last week.
Nice.
And Kathy Mattea, the country music singer. John Sebastian from Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee, musician. So he's had plenty of celebrities on, and it's and even the biggest one, we got a huge thing. His first wife, Susan Sarandon, was on too. So that was kind of fascinating too. And she found him because he had a couple of Broadway actors and actresses on, and I got a story on Broadway World on some of who his guests were. And Susan Sarandon saw that. She saw the story on Broadway World, and she reached out, and Chris said, "I want to be a guest on your show."
Wow.
And that was great. And the YouTube, I don't know, I haven't checked it in a couple of weeks, but the YouTube video of it already had 75,000 followers on it. 75,000. So yeah, it was great.
What would you do a podcast about?
Wow. Well, I'm actually on a team working on a documentary film on pickleball.
Okay.
So that's one, including with one of the top pros in the world. He's one of our team members, or executive producers. But I had a show before we left Connecticut for 2 years, just about. I was the theater and film critic for a radio station in Connecticut, and I would review Broadway shows, regional shows, and new movies. So
did you watch? You watch a lot of movies? I love movies. I just watched the Golden Globes, and there's a bunch of movies I haven't even seen yet that I need to see. I was surprised Air didn't get. They were up for some stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's a good movie, but Oppenheimer is.
I haven't seen Oppenheimer yet. It's a long movie. I haven't seen Barbie.
I'd recommend it. Yeah. I mean, and then my wife loved Barbie, and she kind of said, "I really want you to go. I think you'll like it." I'm like, "Okay, fine." So I went and saw it, and I will admit, it's a good movie. It's clever. It's not Best Picture, but it's very clever and better than I expected it to be.
I saw The Burial with Tommy Lee Jones, and have you seen this, James?
Yes, I saw that. I think
that's going to win awards. That was a great movie.
Very good movie. Yes.
And then I also saw Those Who Want Us Dead.
Ooh, I didn't see that.
Those Who Want Me Dead. It's a very interesting movie with Angelina Jolie. Yeah,
writing it down. Those Who Want Us Dead.
Yeah, I feel like these awards are so political. It's hard to see, in the shows. But I love watching movies, and it's just so great to just get lost in. Do you have your top movie or top 3 movies? What's on your?
Oh man, yeah. Citizen Kane, all-time classic. I love Casablanca too. There's so many Kubrick films I could put in there, and he was actually a grade school classmate of my father's.
Oh wow!
And they were seated alphabetically. So my father's last name, Katz, was Stanley Katz, right in front of Stanley Kubrick.
Oh, that's cool.
But I said, "What was he like, Dad?" And he just said he was kind of a loner. He didn't really talk to money. He didn't really have friends. Oh, too bad. But anyway, it was fascinating.
I like Wes Anderson and M. Night, although M. Night's gone downhill a little bit.
Yeah, he's up and down with his films. He can make some great movies. I mean, Sixth Sense was incredible.
Yeah, there's a lot of good movies coming out, and I'm excited. My wife watches shows. I like movies. What are you partial to?
My wife likes shows too, so we binge on certain shows. On Amazon, we loved Bosch. I don't know if you saw that. Bosch. It's about a police detective in Los Angeles. It goes on for several seasons, but it's so well done, very well. Actually, the first season was probably the worst. It was still good, but all the others got deeper into the characters and less into the police chase, but solving the case. But a fascinating show. Oh, there's so many. I can check my screen. I have a list because I keep track. But beef, I like.
I did put some like my
If
top
you-
10 for the end of last year.
Well, if you watch the Golden Globes, Beef won. I think I don't know if it was best drama or comedy.
Yeah, it did very well.
But it was very clever show with a lot of crazy twists and turns to it. But it was a lot of fun to watch.
I never finished it. I might have watched the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, I hesitated to go through it, but once I got like 3-4 into it, then I was hooked and I had to see the end of it.
I have to concentrate. That's the issue. I have to concentrate and watch. I can't have it in the background like that because then I'm going to keep rewinding it back and forth. Let's say you're wanting to get your product or yourself out there. What would be your ideal media or appearance or PR, whether it's a publication, a TV show, an event? What would you want to, you got it yourself, a spotlight / article. What's it going to be?
You mean for a client?
For you, anything you want.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
You're trying to get yourself, tell your story, share a product, whatever it is.
The most important probably
That's the Wolff Den.
From a perception of credibility would be Wall Street Journal, New York Times, or one of the big network news shows, 60 Minutes, something like that, which I've got issues with all of them, but just the perception is still huge, and it's a perceived credibility if you're interviewed on that as a subject matter expert. So.
The stories
I've been interviewed by the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and local CBS and other stations, but it's not the same. It's because it was commenting on something, but if it's about me, that would be phenomenal, of course.
Yeah,
it's not just a comment.
It just feels like the majority of news is negative, and the media and the publicity. So you having a good story, like we talked before, doesn't really move the needle unless it's. I mean, there's a few really good stories, depending on, overcoming cancer and a survivor.
Yeah, or just there's a fun story on the 13-year-old kid who solved the original Tetris.
Oh, I did hear about that. That was a great movie, by the way, the Tetris movie. If you haven't,
I heard that. I didn't see it. Yeah,
very, very good movie. Yeah, we spent hours playing. I was good at Tetris, but we were playing Super Mario Brothers and all of that stuff. And
yeah, I remember. Way back, Space Invaders was the big one. Yeah,
trying to find a way to beat that. What do you have any?
Wait, I didn't hear your favorite movies. What were your favorite movies?
Oh, my favorite movie of all time is A Few Good Men, and then you got Hoosiers and Field of Dreams.
Okay, Field of Dreams.
Good Will Hunting and Ferris Bueller probably round up the top 5.
Ferris Bueller's terrific. Yeah, all good ones.
So a little bit of mix of comedy and drama, and I love.
Yeah, you were a Mel Brooks fan at all? Young Frankenstein, The Producers, Blazing Saddles.
Yeah, I love all the. I mean, I my friend says I love every movie I see, but it's really because I have a very good idea of what I will and will not like. So there's movies I haven't seen that a lot of people probably like, but I was like, eh.
Did you ever see The Frisco Kid?
I probably have. It sounds familiar.
Gene Wilder plays a rabbi going cross country with Harrison Ford.
Yeah, Gene Wilder is great. I just
watched
Ford.
Harrison Ford was great. And
Harrison Ford's awesome in I just watched his Indiana Jones. Yeah. I haven't seen his 1823 or 1923 show.
Right. I didn't see that, but I saw the show where he plays a psychologist or psychiatrist. I don't know which streaming service it's on, but he was pretty funny. Yeah,
that's great. So many great actors
but that's like a hidden gem that I think if you haven't seen The Frisco Kid, it's very worth seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. For the people who want to get in touch with you and figure out, we got the number scrolling at the bottom. You can check out katnipmarketing.com or give a call. Do you have a specialty in the type of client that you have? I know you.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, celebrities. Chris is one I've been working with for a couple of years now, but there's others too. One in Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee, and I've worked with a few others, several book authors, and some nonprofits are great. Healthcare, I've got a lot of experience with that. I've done gaming clients. I worked with a huge casino as well as a state lottery. So I've certainly got gaming experience. But yeah, I mean, entrepreneurs, small businesses, that's kind of the bread and butter, and then celebrities promoting podcasts or books or um, movies, speaking engagements, things like that. You can do that.
What's one piece of advice that you can give anyone across the board who's looking to just get more well known and they're starting out, they can't afford to hire anyone yet? What's one piece of advice that they should really hold on to?
Okay, I can give you that. There's a client we're starting work with. He's written over 20 books. Okay, he self-publishes, but he's got over 20 books. He's got no social media following. I'm like, how did you do this? I said, everyone else is the other way around. He goes, I know. And he goes, I'm backwards. But I would say grow your social media following.
Yeah.
Start doing that. That will never hurt you. It may be a pain. You may not like it, but we can help you. We've done that for clients. But you do at least post on a regular basis organically. Try to do, if you're doing Facebook, at least one a week if you can. And other platforms. If you're reaching a younger audience, you got to be on Instagram. Those are big. And
I got a quick story for you around that. Last year I was at Podfest. It's a conference for podcasting.
Yeah.
Shout out to Podfest. Their 10th anniversary is coming up in January in Orlando. They have an online component if you just want to go. So if you're in the podcasting world, it's a must go to and see event. They had William Hung there. William Hung. And
Yes.
I met him, and I was going to try and follow him and reach out to him. Do you know how many social media followers he has on Instagram?
Oh God, Instagram probably over 1 million.
He has just about 7,000 followers. And I was like, how in the world did William Hung, who was the most famous person in the world, and it was sort of pre-whatever, but
Yeah.
man, he needs someone to help him out on that.
Wow.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
That's a crazy number to me.
Yeah.
Crazy. So it just, get out there, get content.
Right.
Don't worry about having the perfect content. Just get content out there.
Yeah, I mean, we can build your following. Like with Chris Sarandon, he didn't know what he was doing with Facebook, and he freely admitted it. He had 3,500 followers doing almost nothing, but now we helped build his following, and very quickly we thought we'd get him to 10,000. We got him to over 20. He's got over 25,000 now, and it's so funny. He's got his own garden because he cooks, so he posted a picture of himself with a basket of potatoes from his garden.
Nice.
I couldn't believe it. Thousands of likes.
People love it.
Holy
They love
potatoes.
Yeah.
Thousands of likes. I'm like, Chris, I don't know why that was popular, but you got to do more like that.
It's like falling on your ass in the middle of public and it goes viral. There's no rhyme or reason for anything. So don't try and figure out what's going to work.
Yeah.
That would be my advice. Don't try and figure out what's going to work. Be yourself. Put it out there. There's so many, even these fake stage things they get so many views. It's like,
That's right.
why'd I waste my time on that?
Yep.
We're going to let you out of the Wolff Den with the same question everybody gets. You have 24 hours to spend with anybody in the world. They have to be alive and you can't be related to them. Let us know who you would choose and what would you guys do?
Wow. Okay. Well, I did get to, while he was alive, about 15 years or so ago, I got to spend a couple hours talking with Henry Kissinger, and that was one of the most fascinating conversations I ever had. But so many of the ones I'd want to talk to now are no longer with us. It's hard to decide. But it might be maybe one of the presidential candidates. Hard to pick which one. It could be Biden, Trump, Nikki Haley, RFK Jr., and just to try to get in their head and see what their vision is and pros and cons and things like that.
That's a lot of different conversations you'd have. We've had people who wanted to talk to Trump and Biden. No Haley yet, but she'd probably be an interesting person. It's like in Hollywood and acting. You watch these shows, you just never know what's real. So if I have these conversations, I think I'm a pretty good evaluator of who's phony and who's not, but it's tough sometimes. It's just, that's their job. They're good at it.
Right.
And, we'll revisit that down the line if we ever get enough power and influence and get into the probably only one who would want to talk to me would be Biden. That's just based on who I am. But we'll see what we can do. It will be an interesting year for that to see what happens.
Yeah, I'd love to ask him. I'd love to ask him if he's going to change his running mate, because I think that would help him.
Yeah, well, you'll find out once. I think he's it. Sooner or later, it's crazy. It's already January, and we're talking about Iowa coming up, and wow, the year just flies by. Great to chat with you. A lot of good information here. If you want more, check out katnipmarketing.com online. You can reach out to Ed on LinkedIn. Phone numbers here. Happy to answer any questions you might have, and hopefully help you guys get a boost if you need it. But we got some great guests lined up for this year, and looking forward to a great year. Appreciate your time. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks again, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed. Have a good one.